Hi, this is a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel in my hands. And if you've been watching my channel, you know that I have tons of videos about dogs, specifically about Cavaliers. Little Apple here is not going to have anything to do with this video, nor any of the other dogs, because we're going to try something completely different. We're going to talk a little bit about cooking. I'm going to give you my own take on a classic Italian recipe called Aglio e Olio. Aglio e Olio literally means garlic and oil. It's a dish that was commonly used in poorer sections of Italy. My mother came from an area in Calabria, and that's in the south of Italy, where there's less wealth than you'll find in the northern parts of Italy. And it was a very simple dish because it involved very simple and plentiful ingredients. Basically, garlic and oil, spaghetti or whatever other pasta you want, and that's it. I've put my own spin on this, so we're going to go through it. What I use is the garlic and oil, the spaghetti, anchovy paste, a green vegetable, my favorite is broccoli rabe, and a nice pecorino romano cheese. I'm going to start with the cheese. I want to grate it. I found the easiest way to grate cheese is with a food processor. So you're going to need a food processor if you want to do it this way. I take the cheese, cut it into little chunks, put it in the food processor with the regular blade in there. I always save myself a little slice from the end so that I can munch on the cheese while I'm cooking all the rest of this stuff. I start off with a pulse, then I put it on low, and after I think it's done its job on low, I turn it up to high so I can get a nice finely grated cheese. You're going to need a good-sized fry pan, which is where we do the finishing, and a pot for the spaghetti, one that holds several quarts of water. And I do both things at once. I do the spaghetti prep and the vegetable prep at the same time. So I'm going to start by filling my pot with water. There's my salt. I use coarse ground salt. And I put in about 3 little fingerfuls. Add just a dribble of oil. And then I turn the flame up high. While the water is getting hot, I measure out my spaghetti. I do it by weight. I figure about 2.5 ounces of spaghetti per person. I'm cooking this for 2 people, so I'm going to measure out about 5, maybe 5.5 ounces if I want to be a little generous. So I'll put that aside to go into the pot as soon as the water is boiling. Meanwhile, my next step is to prepare the garlic. I figure about 1 good-sized clove of garlic per person. Nice, easy way to take the outside layer off of the garlic, I find, is to take the little stubby end, cut a little off there, lift up the clove so it starts to peel off that outer layer, put it back down, use the knife to give it a good mash, and then the rest of the skin comes off very easily. I like to thin slice the garlic. If you notice the speed of my slicing, you will see that I am very far from being an accomplished chef. But this recipe brings back a lot of memories for me. My mother would make it. She would just use garlic and oil, And she would put some anchovy fillets in there, which I really, when I was a kid, could not bring myself to eat. But now I find if I don't add a little anchovy paste to the recipe, it's missing a flavor that it really needs. So the anchovy paste is a lot easier to deal with than the fillets, and it's a subtle change. I've given this dish to people who don't like anchovies, and they never said a thing about tasting any anchovy in it. And my next preparation is the broccoli rabe. Now, one bunch of broccoli rabe is plenty for 2 people. You might think it's actually too much, but this cooks down quite a bit when you put it in a hot pan. Once we get our water to a rolling boil, we add the spaghetti. And by the way, if you drop a piece of spaghetti on the floor, if you have Cavaliers, don't worry about it. They love to eat it, and it's a nice little crunchy treat for them. You have to have a nice wooden spoon for stirring. This is the spoon my mother used to call the hot spoon. And I can't tell you the bad memories I have about the hot spoon. But that's another story. So now we're on the clock, so we have to get things moving along pretty well. I'm going to get the garlic started first. So in order to do that, we go to the fry pan. I turn the heat up. I start with a moderately low heat because you want the oil to become infused with the garlic flavor. I tend not to measure anything. I put in what looks like maybe 5 or 6 tablespoons of oil. Just cover the bottom of that pan. I dump in my 2 cloves of thinly sliced garlic and spread it around and let that flavor get into the oil. While the garlic is simmering, I'm going to cut up my broccoli rabe. By the way, if you don't like broccoli rabe, this dish can be made with broccoli or broccolini. It can be made with asparagus, and pretty much any vegetable that you like can be added. I do like green vegetables. I think they look good, and I think it's a good complementary taste to the garlic and oil. And I throw away the bottom part of the stem, which is going to be the toughest part anyway. I try to get the vegetable in, whatever it is, when there's about 7 minutes to go on the pasta. I'm down to just under 10 minutes on my pasta timer. If you look at the fry pan, you can see that my garlic is starting to sizzle very nicely. And I can pick up a beautiful aroma of garlic when I waft that towards my nose. So I know it's time to go to the next stage. I'm going to add a few inches of anchovy paste. And I stir that in. It sizzles a little bit. And once I've got the anchovy paste mix in, I bring my heat up just a bit. And I'm going to watch the garlic and wait for it to start to turn brown. Now, to me, this is a critical part of the dish because I do like my garlic to be a little bit on the crisp side. In fact, if it's a little burned, I really don't mind. So when we see that, it's time to turn the heat down again, down to moderately low, and add the broccoli rabe. And it's going to sizzle a lot. Don't be scared. And the heat is now turned down, so that's just going to simmer for another, hopefully, 7 minutes. I'm going to add a little bit of salt. Salt helps to draw the moisture out of the broccoli rabe. I'm going to add a little garlic powder to enhance the garlic flavor. And for a little bit of a kick, we'll get some fresh ground pepper in there. And toss it all nicely. Once we get down to about a minute from the time the pasta will be ready, I gave it one more good stir with my hot spoon. And I take at least a half a cup to a cup of the pasta water. And we keep that in reserve because that's going to be used in the finishing process. Meanwhile, I'm turning the fry pan down to a low setting now.
The pasta timer is done.
And Alexa is telling me that our pasta timer is done, so we're going to take that off and drain it.
The pasta timer is done.
First I add the pasta into the fry pan. And for stirring and mixing, I like to use tongs. The tongs allow you to lift and roll. Gets the vegetables mixed in very nicely. And if you look closely, you'll see that because I cooked the garlic to a greater degree, you see that we're getting a little bit of a brown color to the pasta, which is the beginnings of our sauce. Add a little bit of our nice freshly grated Romano cheese. Take some of that pasta water that we drained off a little bit ago. Add that in. And then stir it all up with the tongs. And I repeat that process. A little bit more cheese. But I'm going to keep tossing this. And notice that our liquid is reducing a bit. When the liquid gets down to where we can't see much of it anymore, I'll add a little bit more of the pasta water and a little bit more cheese. You will know when you're done when the whole thing starts to take on a creamy texture. I've been tossing this for now about 4 or 5 minutes, and if you look at the liquid, you'll see that it is starting to turn a little bit creamy. So we're just about there. I like a little bit more sauce, so I'm going to add just a touch more of the pasta water. Stir it for another 30 seconds or so, and then we are ready to plate the dish. So if you want to be fancy about the way you plate this, give it a nice swirl. I like to keep it in contact with the sauce as I'm getting it out of the pan. And to finish off, I use a spoon because I like to make sure that we get every last bit, not only of the spaghetti and the vegetable, but also of the sauce. I think this pairs very well with a nice Italian red wine, if you have one handy. And of course, the chef gets to taste first. Love it. Buon appetito!